All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about Teofimo Lopez and Adrien Broner and what George Kambosos had to say about Teofimo Lopez, which might spell trouble for his career down the line. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So Teofimo Lopez is, I do believe it's fair to say that he's the best 135-pound fighter, or at least the top 135-pound fighter in boxing. He has a big win over Vasily Lomachenko at lightweight, and he's getting a lot of publicity and a lot of praise, like he should be when a young man like that does something that's important. However, pretty much since he's won the title off of Vasily Lomachenko, there's been a lot of just, a lot of talking and not a lot of fighting out of Teofimo Lopez. And now it appears as if this amount of time off that he's had in between fights might actually be, affecting him and putting him on a bad road. George Kambosos, who's a guy who he's going to be fighting out of Australia in his next fight, basically said that one of the reasons that he believes that he's going to be able to beat Teofimo Lopez is because Teofimo Lopez is more concerned with partying and drinking than he is with training. And one of the things that really happens around boxing is that, when people start doing that, well, number one, when you do start getting long periods of time in between your fights, that's a high likelihood that you have, other things, to busy your mind with, right? And that's always not always the most productive, right? Marvelous Marvin Hagler is somebody that said, it's really hard to get out of the bed and run when you have, when you're sleeping in silk sheets, but also when you're a young 23, 24-year-old kid who's got a lot of money and is a gregarious personality, it might be hard to kind of get out of the way of some of those temptations. So, it is, something that needs to be taken seriously, or something that needs to be considered with Teofimo Lopez. If he's going to wind up, is he going to be, a really great fighter, or is he going to go the way of Adrien Broner? Because, Adrien Broner and him, even though not at first glance, he and Adrien Broner really do have a lot in common. Both are coming up pretty much through the same weight classes. I think the only difference is that Adrien Broner started at 130, but at a point in time, he was considered to be the top 135 pounder, but all of a sudden he winds up just jumping up and skipping 140 and going all the way to 147. And that had a lot to do with the fact that the stuff that he was doing outside the ring, right? Which was, drinking, partying, and putting on a lot of weight in between fights. The same thing, was happening to Errol Spence Jr. after Errol Spence Jr., when he was, won the title, but it was harder for him to get fights. The longer that he was waiting for fights, the more he was, indulging, in things outside of boxing. And so the fact that Teofimo Lopez says that he really isn't going to be able to make 135 pounds after this fight, is looking to move to 140 against Josh Taylor, that really could be the first couple signs of him, kind of losing control over where he's going in his career. And I think looking at Teofimo Lopez and watching, how he behaves, I think that there's definitely, a chance for that, man. There are guys out there who are very just quiet, who aren't in the limelight, aren't really seeking the limelight. And, those guys tend to be people that are homebodies. That's not who Teofimo Lopez is. Teofimo Lopez is somebody that is, is gregarious, that's really out there in the media, the one that is, I guarantee you is one, to like to party and, and have fun times, right? You can just tell how he interacts with, the other boxers that are out there, man. And it's surprising, at first glance, you wouldn't see the comparison between Adrien Broner and him, but it's pretty much right there, where you have a young guy who gets his belt at 135 and all of a sudden he's the one of, being treated as if he's one of the best fighters in the world and as if he's already made it, right? And that's what Adrien Broner was behaving like he had already made it. He was about billions. He was talking about, all into the business of the boxing and, getting a promotional company and all that, and lost sight of training. And it seems to me that Teofimo Lopez very well could be doing the same thing, because if you don't believe that he is really feeling himself and acting as if he's, the top dog and one of the top dogs in boxing, you're not watching really carefully, right? He's not behaving like he's a hungry fighter. He's behaving like he is, like he's the man, like he's already a superstar. And you see this in other fighters, right? And I'm not saying necessarily that this is something that is going to ruin Teofimo's career, but I will tell you, once fighters start pointing that out and they start looking for that stuff, I've seen a bunch of most scenarios, things kind of go downhill. And it's not just with Adrien Broner that was the situation, and Errol Spence Jr. that it appeared like it was becoming the situation. It's also guys like Sergey Kovalev. That was one of the big things, when Andre Ward was training for, the second fight with Sergey Kovalev. They were very clear that they knew that Sergey Kovalev was, one of the reasons they felt very confident about beating Sergey Kovalev is that Sergey Kovalev was out drinking and doing different, and I think at that point in time he had a reputation for really being an alcoholic. And you could see how after that Andre Ward fight, number one, it became really true that was the case with Sergey Kovalev, because his career really started unwinding, and he wound up getting knocked out by Ileander Alvarez, winds up getting knocked out by getting stopped by Canelo Alvarez, and his career just was never the same after he really started indulging, and people got he got that reputation for being a drinker. So, but the person that compares most closely to me to Teofimo Lopez is Adrien Broner, because of that weight class and because of those guys' personality and their focus on business. I mean, like when you listen to Teofimo Lopez, talk about the Vasily Lomachenko fight, or talk about Devin Haney fight, or Ryan Garcia fight, it's clearly he's not into it. He's not into boxing to be the best, absolute best fighter that he can be. At least that's what it looks like to me. It looks like he's out there to try to make the most money that he can possibly make and be this, big star, regardless of who the actual people are, that he's fighting. And in a way, that seems to me to be a distraction from, the sport, from focus on the discipline in boxing and actually becoming better. Because even at the age with Adrien Broner, he came up in a flash, but he never really improved, right? Because his focus was not on becoming a better boxer in the boxing ring. It was on making a lot of money outside the ring. And Teofimo Lopez seems to have the same thing, where he is not focused on necessarily becoming a better fighter. He's interested in becoming a bigger name. And when you're trying to do all of that social stuff and you're pushing yourself out there, those temptations are out there. And he's a young guy, so maybe this is something that's going on in passing. But if it's not, then I think you could really see, a downslide with Teofimo Lopez, because Teofimo Lopez, from what I can see as a fighter, I think he's a very good fighter, but the majority of what he really is a very, very strong fighter at 135 pounds. He's not somebody that looks like, his skill set is leaps and bounds above other people. He's just big and very, very strong. And a guy with, muscularity like that, the slightest thing can really start vaulting him up in weight classes. And if he has to jump, out of 135, go to 147, and before he knows, at 140, and before you know it, you're at 147. Man, you're now getting in there with the guys like Jaron Ennis and big guys who can take your punch, and where you can't count on one punch knockouts like he got, like he was getting at 135 pounds against guys like Richard Comey, who are smaller fighters. So, I like Teofimo Lopez. I'm not a big fan of all, the stuff with him not fighting Devin Haney and not wanting to do the rematch. But, I wouldn't want this to be the case, because these guys really do have, a group of real good fighters at 135 pounds. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. And I do have him beating George Kambosos. So I think as long as he can make weight and he's not really, really, really drained to do it, I think he'll beat George Kambosos. But, Teofimo Lopez, I think, would be better off trying to become a better fighter and doing, a little less of the, the out of the, outside of the ring stuff, even though it's got him pretty far so far. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.